Hello and welcome to the Celtics Reddit Podcast, where there is not a Celtics game to discuss today, October the 4th, 2022, but we do have an exciting announcement for you. Joining me, as he often does, Wayne Spoony. Spoons, how you doing, sir?
Doing good, Ben. I'm excited. What's going on, man? I have no idea.
No idea at all. I haven't been badgering you about it on Slack for the past 12 months. But let's just get right into it. We have been the Celtics Reddit Podcast for almost 5 years now. We've had so much fun. I cannot even begin to express how rewarding this project has been. And as of today, we are changing our name. We're definitely not going anywhere by any means, but we do feel like it's time for a bit of a rebrand, so that's what we're doing. As of today, the podcast, the channel is going to be called First to the Floor. And as you're reacting to that name, I will say this. Naming things is incredibly hard.
So fucking hard.
And we as a group, just completely behind the curtain here, came up with a huge list of names, and we couldn't all agree on a choice. And so I ended up taking that list of names, running it by a branding consultant who was very generous with their free time, and First to the Floor sort of emerged as the best option. And I don't know, I kind of like it. It's synonymous with a lot of the Celtics culture, and a lot of the time, particularly role players with the Celtics, don't first endear themselves to Celtics fans until they throw themselves on the floor for a loose ball, a la Fionnu Kabengele in his first preseason appearance. Spoony, do you want to talk about why we're rebranding and why we're going in this direction?
Yeah, real quick on the name, it has totally grown on me big time. And I will say the quickest way to get a Tommy point was being the first to the floor. So I think that kind of carries that legacy with it as well. And the graphics and everything look fucking awesome. So I'm really excited to roll those out as soon as possible. But as far as changing the name, we have, and Ben, you know the numbers better than me, but Ben is incredibly modest. I would say we've grown quite a bit in the since I've been on board, from where we were 18 months ago when I started to where we are now. I mean, the YouTube didn't exist, and we're on our way to 1,000 subscribers where we'll be able to monetize that. And really, the interaction on Reddit hasn't really changed. In fact, I'm it's, at least from what I've noticed, is we get a handful of comments, maybe sometimes a dozen, unless we talk about trading Jalen, then we get 100. But other than that, so we've started collecting listeners and fans outside of the Reddit, and naming your podcast the Celtics Reddit Podcast is pretty exclusionary for those people, because they aren't on the Reddit, so they don't know what's good. They don't even, I mean, one of our guys we communicate with regularly is like, I've never been on Reddit. I just happened to find you guys, and I really liked it. Yeah, exactly. So we want to find more of those people. And I think that's, we've talked a long time. Ben and I and the guys have exchanged many messages about this. And I will say it's a testament to what Ben and Jackson and Joe have built, that I could just jump on all of a sudden, get heard by hundreds, sometimes thousands of people.
Tens of people.
Yeah, no, see, there's Ben being modest again.
I am joking. We have grown.
And they've worked so hard. So, I mean, I know this decision probably weighs heavily on especially on you, Ben, who's done this under this name for a very, very long time. So it's not something I've taken lightly, and I'm sure it's not something you've taken lightly, but we just feel like we want to spread our wings a little bit, man, kind of get out there and see how far we can take this thing.
Yeah, a Celtics podcast run primarily by Australians and one very talented American is already very niche, and then limiting it to the scope of Reddit as well, even more niche. And we have been very fortunate to, like you said, Spoony, accumulate a loyal, I don't want to say fan base. There's not a lot of fanfare, but a listener base. We've got a nice little back and forth with our listeners. We've got a nice list of guests that we can go to and that we have gone to frequently on the podcast. And it has grown to the point where, like anything, like any project or any business or anything like that, you start to look at like ways to enhance and refine that project. And that's essentially what we're doing here.
Right.
I want to emphasize that, like, functionally, nothing really will change, especially for those who exclusively listen to the audio podcast. All of our feeds are staying the same. Our YouTube channel will stay the same. Just a total refresh of branding, naming, graphics, etc. But I suppose with a more emphasized commitment to regular content output, obviously the 5 of us on the show, plus Squim Jim, who has been making semi-regular appearances. We've all got full-time jobs. Most of us have got families and other commitments. But between the 5 or 6 of us, we are really committed to outputting as much content as possible and staying within our lane. Like, we obviously know that we're not on the beat. We're not credentialed reporters. But I do feel like we have elevated ourselves above just fans in the amount of time and the amount of energy that we've committed to this. And, starting the podcast back in the day, it was all about continuing the conversation. I've scrolled through Reddit. I've listened to all the podcasts. I've still got so much more to give. I've still got so much more to say. And I don't feel like my emotional fandom has been addressed by anything that I've consumed so far. And that's what we're all about here, is just sort of acknowledging the sort of the tragedy of the Celtics fan, the plight of the Celtics fan. We started this in the middle of Kyrie Irving's first season. We potted our way through that 2019 season. There's been a lot of ups and downs that we've sort of stuck to and committed to, and our commitment to that is going to remain exactly the same. However, if you are an exclusive listener of the audio podcast, you really do need to subscribe to the YouTube channel, if for no other reason, just to support us.
Please, yes.
If you've been listening for this long, just subscribe, because numbers like that, when we reach out to guests or potential guests, numbers and stats and things like that, really do matter. I heard from an unnamed source that, like, Brian Scalabrine, if you ask him to come on your podcast, the first thing he'll check is, like, your numbers. And so things like that matter. So if you want to support us, please subscribe. And then in addition to that, lots of great video content coming out regularly on the YouTube channel. And our mate Jake, who joined the podcast in the off season, he set up an email address, a universal email address. So you can email us at firsttothefloor18@gmail.com. You can subscribe to or follow rather. I'm aging myself here with these terms. Follow our Instagram, firsttothefloor18. And we're on TikTok as well, firsttothefloor18. And really a lot of our, like, YouTube shorts reel, I think, is most compatible with our socials. There's going to be a lot of content, post-game reactions, short clips, highlight clips, trends in terms of actions defensively and offensively that the Celtics run. They're going to be popping up on our social feeds as well. So definitely go ahead, support us and support yourselves as Celtics fans by following all of this content. Spoonie, any sort of additional thoughts on changes there might be content-wise or otherwise?
I mean, really, all I'll say is I do not intend on changing a thing. And in fact, like, if you are someone who engages with us on the Reddit, first of all, thank you. Very much appreciate it. And second of all, I live on that thing. I'm still going to be there. I'm still going to be mixing it up. And I'm still probably going to steal some of your all's comments and shout you out on the pod like we've been doing. So that part of it is not changing. It's really just more of how we are presenting ourselves to people who don't know who we are yet. Mm-hmm. But I think how we're kind of looking at this is, like, I'm frankly proud of a lot of the content we've created. I think we strike a very fine line between emotional, but also not hot take and ridiculous. And I think that makes us unique in a lot of ways. So I'm proud to be a part of it. And when I tell people who I don't know what my podcast is called, it'll be a little bit easier to not have to bring up the Reddit. No offense. I love Reddit, but there's some maybe unfair stereotypes about the type of people who use Reddit. So I'm not going to distance myself personally from that, but maybe it's not necessarily the best first thing to get from a podcast is like, this is about Reddit. It's first, and also the Celtics.
So I feel like most of our loyal listeners will completely get it, but would love to hear your thoughts, in the comments. And this episode will be posted to Reddit because it's still Reddit relevant. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on logic and rationale behind this change. As far as like episodes appearing on Reddit in the future, the mods have been extremely generous with us over the past 5 years.
Very.
I think as long as we can include some sort of Redditisms in future episodes, those episodes will likely end up on Reddit, or at least clips from those episodes. That there has been a pressure because of our Reddit branding in the past to sort of forcibly include Reddit content in the past where sometimes it hasn't made sense to do so. I'm personally looking forward to not having to have that commitment, and we can just include in every episode, in every piece of content, what organically and logically belongs there. Before we officially flip the switch here, it's only right that I guess we pay Spoody a brief homage to the Celtics Reddit podcast. 5 years, 230 episodes, a litany of guests who I thought we really never had any business speaking to.
Right.
If you ask the guys, like my success metric for the show is how many people can we talk to that we would otherwise have absolutely no business talking to. And that list of people continues to grow, which has been a lot of fun. We do have some historic Reddit posts to get to very quickly. First post here, 5 years ago by Brutal Gash, seeking potential Celtics podcasting members from Australia who are free to record in an Australian time zone friendly format. I talk about my...
What a sales pitch.
Online white guy cliche. I have a fantasy basketball podcast. I'd like some friends to join me in an even more niche podcast. But anyway, and then we can see Jackson, aka Rickman Lives, very keen, not an expert by any means, but I live on this subreddit. So there's that. This is the first interaction between myself and Jackson. And then a lot of other people who I don't recall why. This was 5 years ago. I didn't respond to. But here we've got No Scroats McFly, Joe, our New Zealand correspondent. I am in New Zealand. Would also be keen to give it a crack. So those are the inceptions of
That's
the Celtics
crazy,
Reddit
man.
podcast. And then we do also have one Wayne Spoody joining the podcast. So a year ago, and this sort of coincides with my, my daughter was born 2 years ago, and about a year ago, work and family commitments got really hectic, and wanting to continue the podcast, I felt the need to reach out to more people, particularly in a different time zone, so we could continue to keep these pods rolling and keep the content rolling for you guys. And we've got the great Wayne Spoony here, J Boogie Revival. Definitely be interested if you would consider me, which just, of course, we'd consider. It seems so crazy a year on that we wouldn't consider you. Time commitment, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, Spoony, you've committed a lot of time. I'll come back to you, Spoony, but we do have to shout out Celtics J, who
For sure.
Is no longer with the podcast. And not to peer too far behind the curtain, but Celtics J had a lot of passionate ideas. And a lot of them came to fruition on the show. The name of the show going forward is definitely part of that. And we're really thankful for Celtics J's commitment to the show for a year. But creatively, he wanted to go in another direction, which is why he has literally gone in another direction. But we're really thankful for the time that Jay committed to the show. Spoony, you've been on the show for a year. Can you talk about, if you'll indulge me for a second, like what that experience has been like for you and how you think the show and yourself has changed throughout that year?
I started during the playoffs, like after the Nets series, because my first show was a trivia show, I think before free agency and the draft. And me and Jay did like a pod while the draft was still going on, and we were podding and we're live for the Beggarone pick. So yeah, I'm pushing. I'm like about a year and a half now. I'll say I feel like the production has become even more sophisticated, and behind the curtain, that is all Ben, or at least 98% Ben. So, I mean, that is all him. The reason this all looks awesome, the reason why we figured out StreamYard, the reason why he keeps pushing the pod forward. And frankly, if you look at other Celtics pods that are more popular than us and you go to their YouTube channel and watch an episode, it doesn't look nearly as good. It doesn't have nearly the bells and whistles. It doesn't have nearly, we're cutting in plays now. I mean, we're doing all sorts of stuff and that really is all Ben. And I think at least from when I first started, again, when we didn't have a YouTube till now, and I would say just personally, I had a child I had like a 3-month-old when I started this podcast, and now he's over a year and a half. So my life has changed a lot. My dad died in November, and I took a couple weeks off from the podcast. So like from where I was 18 months ago until now, probably two of the biggest life-changing events that will ever happen to me happened to me while I was on this podcast. And I will say the podcast has always been a way to escape from the real world and just bullshit and talk seas. All my friends, like I don't live near any of my friends from home anymore. And, you know, we exchange texts about the Celtics, but being able to sit down once or twice a week and talk with somebody or a couple of guys who are just as passionate as me about it has been honestly like cathartic and just so much fucking fun.
Yeah.
And the fact that, I mean, to your point, Ben, I remember when I think the first guest I was on with was Corrales, and I was like, I get to talk to the dude I listen to every fucking day. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, what happened to me? How did this happen? So it's been great, man. I'm looking forward to another season, dude.
Yeah, we're really committed to this thing going forward, and we hope that the new branding, the graphics, and everything kind of help prop up and emphasize how serious we are about this thing to potential new listeners and potential new guests and collaborators and whatnot. I've got a quick clip here from the first ever episode.
Oh yeah, baby!
Going back to 2018, the first ever episode of the Celtics Reddit Podcast. Please forgive me. Hello and welcome to the unofficial Boston Celtics Reddit podcast. My name is Ben Zales and I'm joined by, for the first time of hopefully many times, my mate Jackson. Jackson, how are you, mate?
I'm good, Ben. Yourself?
Yeah, great, man. Thanks for joining me on this. I think it's going to be fun.
No, my pleasure. I love talking about the Celtics in my own time, so if I can record it and put it on the internet, then I feel like I've achieved something, and it's, I'm all for it.
From the playoffs onwards, I would dare say that Brad has not played his best hand yet. I would dare say that Kyrie has not yet played his best hand, and it's going to be exciting to see what the evolution is.
This is the 19 playoffs
from this team. 2018,
look,
all right,
after
that seems like as good a point as any to end this on.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Insane takes. Kyrie Irving hasn't yet played his best hand.
Everyone's takes from that era has aged poorly. Can I just say it's funny you did the hello and welcome even then?
Yeah,
it's been your signature from day one, dude.
That's been the blueprint. That's been the schematic. We've got to get to some thanks here before we wrap up and before we reveal the branding for the new podcast. Some quick thanks. Like I mentioned, we've had some incredible guests on in the past. I want to thank, in particular, John Corrales, who was our first ever guest, who I was so nervous for. I brushed my hair and wore a collared shirt. I freaked out because, like you said, Spoonie, he's the daily news of the Celtics.
Yeah.
Suddenly he's on my screen on our podcast, and I shat myself when his face appeared on the screen. Ryan Bernardoni, aka Danger Cart, Steve Bulpett, Tom Westerholm, Abby Chin, Chris Forsberg, who beyond admitting to plagiarizing some of Spoonie's content, has been so generous with his time. And
way more generous than we deserve.
Yeah. And go ahead.
And Forsberg kicks it with us afterwards sometimes. And he'll just shoot the shit with us for 15 minutes. I cannot more effusively praise how cool that dude is and how nice he's been to us when he has zero reason to.
Yeah, he is as advertised. He is as nice a guy as he comes off of on the broadcast. He is that nice a guy in real life. So huge shout out to Chris Forsberg, Abby Chin, who's been on a couple of times as well, who I mentioned earlier, Matt Penny, who has changed roles in his profession and is sort of less available as a podcast guest, or not at all available, but he's been very generous with his time. Bongos. Am I forgetting any guests, Spoonie? I feel like that's pretty much it, but we've had some big names on in the past.
Alex Hoops just hopped on. We're hoping to have him back on. Greeny, Stool Greeny.
Of course.
Shout out to Greeny for coming on.
I forget Greeny?
I know. Yeah, we've had Greeny on quite a bit too. So I will feel really bad if we forget one of them, especially if it's one of the guests that I usually reach out to. Yeah. Then I'll feel extra bad. But I think Greeny and Penny are really the two I generally tend to touch base with. And I've lost my man Penny, R.I.P. Penny, if you're listening, let me know if you want to hop on sometime. But it's been incredible talking to all these. Like, I've been following Greeny forever, and just like, sit down and kick it with him for an hour, a couple times a year is like, it's wild, man. It really is.
It's so much fun. And maybe the only more enjoyable part of the pod is interacting with our listeners.
Definitely.
Very quickly, I want to thank a couple of Reddit mods, Leet Speak, who has been on the pod, Tice159 as well, who's been incredibly supportive of our sort of continued posting on Reddit and some engagement in the Reddit threads for all of our episodes. And then to our very loyal listeners, like, you know who you are, and we know who you are. A few names that come to mind: Z Gamer, obviously, with an essay comment on everything that we post, which is so great. And I
could not appreciate it more. Yeah.
So good. We love Z Gamer, as well as Carl Sarf, everyone who joins us in the playback stream as well, which is going to be kicking off again, at least in the final few games of the preseason, and certainly on opening night, we'll be firing up that playback stream again. So make sure you jump in there. Spoonie, any other listener shout-outs that you want to throw at us?
Nibs, my guy Nibs, Down East Sun, Adam, 0529 are three that come to mind that I interact with a lot. They also always read and comment on my writing. I think Squim has evolved past a listener and is now a contributor to the pod, but he was a listener for a long time before that. So shout out to Squim just in general for listening and being a part of it too. So I know obviously we're probably forgetting tons of people, and for that I apologize. Oh, my guy Tom, who hops in the live streams, shout out Tom. And yeah, all the people that have come over from Team Hold, when I first, as a baby content creator, got my first ever appearance on any media with Team Hold, and all the people who've come over from Celtics Corner when we've done kind of the home and homes with them. So I appreciate the Celtics Corner guys, Be Smooth and Jags as well, for interacting and engaging with us for sure.
I want to shout out our graphic designers, Mike Collymore, aka Collymotion. He did our initial graphics back in the day, that little jersey hanging from the cartoon locker, and then Smartwater, who did the graphics that you see now on your screen that we've been using for the past year. Anyone who's been a part of the pod at this point, you mentioned Squim Jim. I want to give a shout out to Alexander Walker, who was with us a bit in the early days. Jake, who just joined us this offseason, already has his own video out on our channel. Larbird33, who was a part of the podcast at a period of time, and it was great. A little divisive on Celtics Reddit, but that made it a lot of fun. And he was also the one who sort of gave me the nod to get things set up on YouTube as well. Celtics J, like we mentioned, and Wayne Spoonie, who I have to personally thank you. You've been a part of the pod for the past year. Your commitment to the show, to content output, just the angle that you provide as well. There's a lot of people who listen to the podcast who very specifically love their Spoonie content. So huge thanks to you, mate. And of course, we had that wonderful day. I mentioned it 10 or 20
Hell yeah.
in Boston. We hung out with your buddy Ro. We ate lobster rolls. We sat in Sully's bar near TD Garden and kind of finalized the...
Talked about this very rebrand.
Had the rebrand over a couple of beers. And look, I got to give a huge shout out to Jackson and Joe, who have been doing the pod with me since February 2018, almost 5 years. The constant daily recipients of messages from me in our Slack and previously Google Hangouts. Guys, let's do a pod today. I know nothing's happened, but there's an angle here with Gordon Hayward's new hairstyle or whatever it might be. We're gonna get a pod out now. And they have been withstanding that barrage of messages from me for 5 years, and in their own right putting out great content with a lot of laughs and a lot of humor as well. And that they've been doing it for 5 years along with me. So huge shout out to those guys. Apologize if I'm forgetting anyone. There've been a lot of people who have sort of popped in as far as collaborating.
Parsnip.
Parsnip
Shout out
Pizza.
Parsnip.
Yeah, who does have a spot on the podium for our final trivia show, which is coming up, availability pending.
It's going to be like those last A Song of Fire and Ice books, man. That thing might never be coming out.
I know, right? To wrap here, we're going to play the intro for the new podcast. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple or whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, definitely worth checking out on YouTube. Spoonie is seeing this new podcast intro for the first time. We're going to run it, and then we're going to flick the switch.
Who's going to be first to the floor here? And it was Marcus Smart, as he usually actually is. Brown drives, layup off the glass. That's not the first time we've seen a superstar in green and white sacrifice his body. Garnett knocked away. Ball game.
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
Oh, hell yeah.
That looks awesome.
Yeah, and look, we're going to be refining that. I mentioned Cabin Jelly already had his own first to the floor moment in preseason game 1, so already we need to make some amendments to that intro clip.
Yeah, get
And
KG out of there.
new logo, new background here on StreamYard. Yes, get KG out of there. Absolutely. I don't know, Spoody. I think I've said everything there is to say.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm just very, very happy you were willing to, let me hop on and do this with you, man, because it's been super fun and I'm looking forward to the year, dude. Let's fucking do it. Banner
Absolutely.
18, baby.